All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 71 of the Mike the New Haven podcast. A very interesting episode on tap today. Glad you could be back. If you want to check out the previous episode, please check out episode 70. That was a continuation of a mini series within the podcast called Tales from the Boom Room, in which I chronicle retired members of the New York City Police Department's arson and explosion squad, as well as their bomb squad. And we just had on retired bomb squad detective Paul Perricone, who discussed numerous things about his 32-year career with the NYPD, including working in the emergency service unit, making a rescue at the Statue of Liberty, and of course his work with the bomb squad, including the investigations into the attempted bombing in Times Square in 2010 and the pipe bombs that were detonated in New York City in 2016 and 2017 as well, in different incidents. He was a fascinating guy, so please go listen back to volume 6 of the miniseries Tales from the Boom Room. So this interview that I'm going to do in episode 71 is pretty interesting because it's not often that people reach out to me. Usually it's the other way around. You're on the hunt for guests, you're reaching out to people and you hope that they say yes. But this is something that was brought to my attention via LinkedIn. And I'd like to shout him out. Fago Franklin III, who I know will be listening to this episode, brought this to my attention, and brought to my attention specifically my next guest, who's a woman whose community ties to philanthropy have contributed to a city she wasn't born or raised in, but has certainly come to adopt as her own. Originally born and raised in Chicago, she flocked over to the Gateway City in the early 90s, working initially as a dietitian at a children's hospital. And I'm referring to St. Louis, of course. And it was in 1995, however, that her life changed, and she soon found herself as a member of the cheerleading team for the St. Louis Rams, who were previously, of course, the Los Angeles Rams, and had just recently at the time relocated to St. Louis. And she manned the sidelines as a member of the cheerleading team from 1996 through 1999. And it was in 1999 that her life would take a turn when her father, Ty, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And in a situation like that, it's not easy to turn a negative into a positive, but she did that. And she immersed herself in charity work for awareness regarding the illness and awareness for caretakers, too, caring for those with this horrible illness. And in 2016, she founded a charity, Gateway to a Cure. Her name is Jennifer Cobb, and we're happy to welcome her to the Mike the New Haven podcast, episode 71. Jennifer, thank you for doing this. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm looking forward to talking about the foundation and what I am up to these days. And I am doing well, trying to stay warm and dry here in St. Louis. It's cold and rainy.
Yeah, it's
I'm so ready for summer.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty rainy where I'm at myself. It's been raining the last few days here in Connecticut. And the temperatures have been about in the 50s or 60s, but same thing. I'm just ready for the winters here, as you know, in St. Louis. The winters are quite brutal here as well. So I'm dying for the summer myself. So I mentioned you weren't originally from St. Louis. You're actually born and raised in Chicago. And you referred to Chicago as a mini New York in terms of the diversity and the great family areas that exist within the Windy City. So I guess just take me through your childhood in Chicago.
Yeah, so born and raised, most people in Chicago, you have a suburb of Chicago that you're raised in, you're automatically from Chicago. It's kind of a joke. But I was about 25 minutes southwest of in a town called Orland Park. And my dad was an electrician, did a lot of the work on many of the buildings as iconic buildings such as John Hancock downtown Chicago. He did a lot of electrical work, commercial and residential. And he was learned the trade as he went through life, and ran an amazing company over the years. And unfortunately, in 1999, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's right around the same time Michael J. Fox went public with his disease. And after I graduated from high school, I went to Carbondale, Southern Illinois University, which is a southern college. It's about 6-7 hour drive. And it's about an hour and a half out of St. Louis. So after graduation, I landed a job in St. Louis at a children's hospital. And so that's what brought me to the St. Louis area as a dietitian. And that's kind of the little bit of my navigation from Chicago to St. Louis, how I got here into the city. My background is gymnastics and cheerleading. I did a lot of gymnastics competitively in high school and did junior high cheerleading for basketball. In high school, I did football and basketball. And then I also cheered in college, um, at the collegiate level, doing football and basketball. And so when I was driving home from work one day after moving to St. Louis, I had heard on the radio that Mrs. Frontieri was bringing the Rams from LA to St. Louis, and she was holding open auditions. So I thought, I don't really have a lot of dance background, a little bit, but not like some of these trained dancers. And as you know, professional cheerleading is a lot different than college and high school. You're doing a lot of gymnastics and stunts with, your partners and stuff like that. But in professional cheerleading, it's more of, you're showcasing a lot of dancing on the field. And so I thought, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to go in, and, if I walk in, and I have a great time and make a friend when I leave, good for me. So I just walked in and I saw these amazing dancers, accomplished and just beautiful. I'm like, okay, I don't know why I'm here, but you know what? I'm going to give it a try because that's just my personality. And my tenacious character kind of pushed me to find a way how to make the best of the situation, given that my talent wasn't at a level of some of these other women. And so what does Jen do? She goes and finds the strongest dancer in the room, and I stand right next to her and make friends with her. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow everything you do. I'm going to shadow you like crazy. And we became really great friends. And a long story short is I ended up making the top 40, and stayed with the team for a few seasons. And it was amazing. I was part of the Greatest Show on Turf with Marshall Falk and Kurt Warner, Dick Vermeil, Ernie Conwell, and Torrey Holt, just some of the greats. And it was the most amazing experience in my life. And after retiring and coming off the field, oftentimes you hear of the players, they start charities and foundations. I thought, you know what? I'm a cheerleader. I'm still part of the NFL family. I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to dedicate my philanthropy platform to Parkinson's and awareness of the disease since my father was diagnosed. But then there's another side to the disease that many people don't talk about, and that's the caregiver, the one behind the scenes that is nudging every day that person who's battling a brain disease such as Parkinson's or MS, ALS, concussions, Lewy bodies, dementia, that brain cancer, that they have a place for supporting themselves, because there's constantly all day 24/7 supporting the one going through the disease, making sure their medicine is taken, their food is eaten, drive them to and from their doctor's appointments, bathe them, change their sheets, make sure they show up for therapy. I mean, it's a round the clock job. And so oftentimes you find that these caregivers hit a wall. They get depressed, they have anxiety, they're physically exhausted, they have financial hardships. And so at the end of their day, who's supporting them? So then they can be at the top of their game to support those that are going through the disease. Because if they're not supported, it's kind of a domino effect. And so that's what led me to collaborate with Muhammad Ali Parkinson's Center, which is ran now. Today it's ran by Lani Ali, which is Muhammad's widow. And she was so joyful and gracious to give me a really, really good insight to what Muhammad's legacy stood for, and that was caregivers. And because Muhammad had amazing caregivers around him while he battled the disease of Parkinson's, his doctor, his wife, his children, all the loved one, friends, he was able to manage his disease very, very well. And he had a lot of hope and comfort going through it because of the care that he had around him. And so Team Gateway to a Cure is focused 100% of their efforts on not only raising funds for research for Fox Foundation, which is great, but until we have a cure, we have a caregiver. And so what we want to do with Team Gateway is we would like to advocate for the caregivers, let them know that they're not alone, that there are support groups. There's formulas out there to help them reach their care and their support while they love and give hope and comfort back to the ones going through the battle.
Right. And we're talking with Jennifer Cobb here on the Mike Danaven podcast. You know, it's difficult because, especially if the person's elderly, then that kind of compounds the situation. And I saw it, even though it wasn't Parkinson's, when my great grandmother was at the end of her life a decade ago. You know, I saw the toll it took on my mom to care for her. And it's a noble thing, but honestly, it's, as you said, it's something that really does take so much out of you. It's like going through. I mean, you're talking about Ali, right? It's like going through a 15-round fight. And at the end of it,
Yes.
you know, you're just worn out. And, you know, support is really of the essence. And there's something interesting about what you do with this foundation. I mean, Michael J. Fox, who just recently stepped away from acting as well as a result of his battle with this disease. Of course, I think he's based primarily in New York City, and therefore it's a lot easier over there to launch a foundation. Of course, Muhammad Ali, his name being what it is, his iconic status in American folklore, same thing. But bringing the resources to St. Louis, you mentioned something in an article about having a conversation with Mr. Fox about that. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so over the years, I had raised quite a bit of money for the Fox Foundation, and he has honored me in New York City for my efforts every year at the VIP Awards. And after a few years, my heart was kind of pulling in a different direction. So I presented to the Fox Foundation, hey, I want to bring more fun into fundraising, and I want to raise more awareness for caregivers, because I see what my mom does every single day. She doesn't get a break. And I think, wow, I can only imagine what she goes through. And so all of a sudden, boom, what hits the world? COVID. And so you and I and millions of others had had a little taste of what it's like in their life during quarantine. They don't get out of the house. It's very quiet. It's not like you can pick up a 60 or 70-year-old person and put them in the back seat of a car and drive them to the grocery store and take them to Target. You know, you can't, or you know, run errands. You got to stop. You got to let them out to go to the bathroom. You got to make sure the food's timed with the medicine. You have to make sure that they're not at a fall risk. You got to time everything so the dyskinesia and the tremors aren't manifested in great amounts with stress, because when there's a lot of stress, their dyskinesia and their tremoring gets worse and worse as the day progresses. They're a lot better in the mornings. I mean, you can't really put them in a cart. You know, they have these wheelchairs that, you know, electric wheelchairs you can drive around the store, but it's not like you can just push them and go in and get out. It's a long drawn out process. Even putting them in a car and getting them buckled, it's, you know, everything's a timing. So how does she get her support? So I thought, you know, that's kind of where my heart was going. And they gave me the name, the Fox Foundation gave me the name Team Gateway to a Cure. And what we have done is we've opened up the acknowledgement of caregivers and how important they are. They need support. But as you know, caregivers are not just in St. Louis, they are everywhere. You're actually a caregiver. I'm a caregiver. I'm a mother taking care of my 3 children. I take care of my father as an adult child, and I also take care of myself. Um, you know, I have had moms reach out to me in the same situation, adult child caring for a parent, caring for their younger children with disability, and also battling breast cancer, taking care of herself. And so you have younger children or older siblings taking care of younger children. You have adult children taking care of their parents. You have grandparents taking care of their grandchildren. And, you know, so caregivers come in different packages. And it's really important that we all look at what our stories are and that we share each other's stories, the way that Mohammed, the way that Michael, the way that Jennifer, you know, how we are sharing our stories in hopes that will give comfort to others that are going through the same situation.
Right. You know, you mentioned some of the side effects of Parkinson's and what it does, you know, just for my audience, that some of which may not have an exact understanding of, I mean, they know the disease, but they may not understand just what exactly it does to someone. Do you mind explaining just what this disease entails and the side effects on the human body?
Yeah, so just to give you a little example, the sister to Parkinson's is Alzheimer's. So what you often see in an Alzheimer's patient is their mind is not there, but physically you don't see anything. It's the complete opposite with Parkinson's. Physically you see it, but mentally they're sharp as they were when they were, 40, 50, 30 years old. Their mind is not what is the issue. It's 100% physical. So you have dyskinesia, you have, which is the twitching of the head, as you've seen with Michael J. Fox on television and others that are battling. You see the tremoring where the hands and the legs are kind of shaking. You see freezing moments is when the body is walking, all of a sudden it's frozen. And you're trying to tell the brain to move, but you're frozen. You can't. And that's a very difficult symptom, especially when you're in a public area, such as my father was in the bathroom at a restaurant and he's, wanted to hold on to his independence. And he goes to the bathroom and he has a freezing moment in the stall. And voice projection, which is really difficult as the disease progresses in the Parkinsonian community. You'll notice that most of the time that their voice doesn't get used as much because they have a softer voice projection. And so, as you can imagine, how difficult it is to be in a spot in a public restroom trying to call out when you're sitting there waiting for your freezing moment to go away and you have nobody there to help you. I mean, I can't go into the men's bathroom, so it's you got to crawl under the store. I mean, it's just it's a very difficult emotional moment for someone who's battling the disease. And then you all also have to understand that when you have the disease, you feel trapped. You feel like you're losing these independence and you can't do the things you often used to do, like get in and out of a car, drive a car, um, drawing, writing is difficult. The handwriting gets very small and hard to read. Just having a conversation with somebody, the voice, it's difficult to hear them and understand their words. So it's really important for your audience to understand that you have compassion, but the most important takeaway from this conversation, if I can say to all of your listeners and anyone else that has had this situation in their families or are battling this situation, don't feel that you have to come in as a caregiver or somebody who's supporting them going through it and think that you're God Jr. and you're going to save them. Because oftentimes what happens is family members don't know what to do and they get stressed and they have anxiety because they want to go in and jump in and save them. And they want to do everything in the world. And what you find is that doesn't work. And honestly, if you sit down and ask the person who's battling the disease what truly, truly, truly their heart wants, they want to just be loved. They just want to sit and just visit. They want to talk about and reminisce about old times. They want to sit and do a puzzle. They want to watch movies. They want to cook a meal. They just want to be enjoyed and loved and given hope and comfort, because you're never going to bring them back. They're not going to go back to when they were 30, 20 years old. And it breaks my heart because I look at my dad as if I'm still 16 years old, the hero of his daughter's eyes. And I know I'm not going to change it. Parkinson's has changed my father. But I do know that my dad is funny and my dad will always be Ty Cobb. And then when I do get the chance to sit and talk and visit with him, I remember that. I don't talk about the disease. I ask him about medicine. I don't ask him about therapy. We talk about days when we used to fish in Lake Michigan and go boating and camping and all the fun stuff he used to cook and the funny movies that I've been watching and what he's been watching and talk about news and just enjoy who he is and where he's at in his life.
Right. Because, that's important. Obviously, you want to make the person, you don't want the person to feel like they're defined by the condition that they have. You want them to be able to be viewed as what they are, which is a human being, which is the most important thing. That's the tendency, unfortunately, of society as a whole, that when someone has any kind of condition, we unfortunately just hone in on that, and it's important that we look past that. And it segues perfectly into what I wanted to ask you next. And like I said, we were talking with Jennifer Cobb here on the Mike Maven podcast, former NFL cheerleader, and also somebody who is doing great work with her foundation, Gateway to a Cure, on awareness for Parkinson's disease and caretakers for those with Parkinson's. Right now in this pandemic, we've seen a lot of attention being given towards COVID relief, understandably so. It's a great thing, and you've taken part in that, which we'll discuss in a moment. Previously and still throughout this pandemic, there's been much discussion about helping those with cancer and caretakers for those with cancer. And now recently, after some tragedies and the mental toll this pandemic has taken, mental health is a priority. Suicide awareness and prevention is a priority. And all those things are great, and they're in the public lexicon and they're mainstream, if you will. But from your vantage point, is awareness for Parkinson's at a similar level? And if so, or if not, what do you think can be done to increase the awareness going forward?
Yeah, and I think Michael J. Fox and Mohammed have changed that. If they've given the Parkinson's brain diseases at whole a more complete understanding and recognition to that it is hitting a lot more. I mean, there's 1 million people worldwide that are diagnosed every year that we know of with Parkinson's. And there's two factors. There's if you are diagnosed at a young age, 40 or younger, it's in your genes. If you're diagnosed later on in life, it's environmental. And so we are so close to a cure in terms of now we have a pill that the Parkinsonian community can take that actually reverses the damage that Parkinson's has done to the brain. And it's because of the efforts of all the FDA approval of research and funding for Alzheimer's. So they're crossing over medication since it's already FDA approved to see how it can help the Parkinsonian community. And so they're also using other medications and from other brain diseases to help and crossing them over. There's also a digital device that is implanted into the brain. It's deep stem stimulation, brain stimulation, and that has helped a lot of people that are suffering with Parkinson's. There's also it's kind of similar to insulin pump with diabetes. It's a pump for Parkinson's medication. Depending on how severe your symptoms are, talk to your neurologist, not your general practitioner, your neurologist, about the options for you, because everybody with Parkinson's has different symptoms. It's all different. It's everyone is battling their own Parkinson's disease. And so what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. And the other advice I would give is do not rely on a GP to diagnose you with Parkinson's, meaning that if you are noticing symptoms of Parkinson's, and again, you can go to www.teamgatewaytoacure.org and read more about what to look for. Do not go to a general practitioner because they will go down a checklist and say, all right, you have Parkinson's. In order to have a true diagnosis of Parkinson's, you need a brain scan. and you need a good MRI, good 3D, 4D image of brain activity. And Dr. Ryan Walsh out in Phoenix, Arizona, who heads the Barrows Neurological Institute. He is the head research scientist out there, and he has given me a great insight to the Parkinsonian research and what is being done now, which is also associated with the Muhammad Ali Legacy Care Program. The two of them intertwined together. But he is now funding a brain scan machine that is incredible for truly diagnosing the level of Parkinson's in each patient. So that's a huge finding. I'm really excited about it. But I think going back to your question is talk about it. I think you and I using our platforms, understanding that what sort of things that need to be looked at if you are a carrier of that gene, if you've noticed restless leg syndrome, if you've noticed shuffling in steps, if you've noticed any kind of symptoms from family from the past or currently, those are sort of things that need to be acknowledged, and going to see a good neurologist for a true diagnosis.
Right. I wanted to ask this, given your background in sports with the Rams. The Rams, of course, relocated back to Los Angeles. But of course,
I'm not happy about that, Mike. I'm just saying. I mean, we are a two-time championship Super Bowl team, but still, Kroenke is not on my good list. Absolutely not.
I was curious about that. I'm like, the Rams had established, it's not like they had gone there and had no positive history. No, they've done some very good 2 Super Bowl appearances under the St. Louis moniker, of course, or banner. Won it in 1999 against the Titans. Played it down to the wire, but lost to the Patriots in 01. It was a great game. And yet, after almost 20 years, they just went back. I'd never seen that. I know teams can leave markets and relocate, but I'd never seen a team relocate only to go back to their city of origin. So that was the first for me as a sports fan.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask about this, even though they're not around in St. Louis anymore. They're still the Blues. And of course, St. Louis, I mean, the number one love is the Cardinals, right? So that being said, how have those two organizations helped out Gateway to a Cure, if at all?
Yeah, so the Cardinals were so gracious hosting a Back to the Future night, which a percentage of ticket sales went back to the Fox Foundation through Team Gateway to a Cure. So what we are is we are a platform to fundraise for Michael J. Fox Foundation, Team Fox, but also we have another category to Team Gateway, and that is the other side of the disease, and that's caregiver, which is what we've been talking about today. Caregiver support and what that looks like, and how important, no matter what you're battling, you can fill in the blank. It can be cancer, it can be brain disease, it can be diabetes, whatever it is. The caregiver is always the one right next to those that are battling. And you don't hear of a 5K for caregivers. You don't hear of a fancy dinner auction for caregivers. But guess who's right next to them while they're walking the 5K and while they're sitting there eating that great meal, tucking them into bed and doing it all over the next day is a caregiver. And so now the insurance companies are recognizing these caregivers as the second patient. And so you'll see and notice that a lot of these hospitals are putting in support group programs. YMCAs all over the country are putting in support group programs. The Muhammad Ali Legacy Care Program, they have, thank goodness for technology, because they're able to not even have to leave their home, and you can log on through the iPad into a caregiver support group, and so that's so amazing, because pre-COVID, this is really changed because of that. This didn't happen pre-COVID. And so we are almost forced now to have to switch gears and how that looks to having your loved one at home because having your loved one at home versus in a home away from your loved ones, it can be challenging. It's a lot of out-of-pocket expense if you haven't been saving for it. It's also very difficult because of COVID to go and visit. There's a lot of precautions, new rules and regulations that you can't do anymore. I'm not saying there's anything bad about these nursing homes and specialty homes. Absolutely, they're great. Depends on your situation. But you're going to find that a lot of loved ones want to keep their family members at home. And so the caregivers put in a position to take on a lot of emotional burden, physical burden, and financial burden. And so if the family can all come together and support each other in that effort, not only are you going to have unlimited visitor hours and you can eat whatever you want, you don't have to rely on what's on the menu tonight,
Right.
And the loved one who's battling the disease gets to see their family pictures on the wall and smell the smells of the kitchen from the food and hear the laughter of their loved ones walking in and out of the room. And so there's a lot of comfort that comes from that. And, but again, it goes back to, okay, there's a lot on the caregiver's shoulders and how that looks. And so thank goodness for the Family Caregiver Act that allows, if you do have a loved one that lives in the home and changes residency, that there is a financial compensation for that, which is wonderful. And so a lot of these things, you can go on to the website www.teengatewaytoacure.org, and you can read more about not only the symptoms of Parkinson's, but also the caregiver and how the caregiver needs to support themselves. There's a page on the website, and I'm so happy that we just launched the brand new website. It looks amazing. It's a lot more information for caregivers, a lot of information, for Parkinson's, and a lot of new research development that you can read up on, and different resources that you can reach out to for more and more information. I think the common denominator here with everyone going through it is just to recognize and understand that you are not alone in this battle, whether it's on the side of Parkinson's or on the side of the caregiver, that there is somebody always to support. And if you cannot find a way, you reach out to Team Gateway and we will find a way for you.
Amazing. Amazing. I mentioned, and you've mentioned it as well, of course, this pandemic. We've been in it for over a year now. It seems like yesterday it was March, and we heard that there were some cases in Seattle, in that part of the country, and then all of a sudden we were in lockdown, and that's pretty much where we've been for the most part since then. Things are beginning to open back up. Obviously, there's major vaccine distributions going on throughout the country, and you've been on the front lines in the sense of helping out those that have been trying to help those that have been unfortunately infected with this virus. So as far as your efforts for COVID relief goes, I think it's fantastic what you've done. And why don't you tell the audience about
it? In terms of COVID relief with the Parkinsonian community?
Yes, I read about that, and I think it's interesting for sure. And I think it's something that, like I said, the audience should definitely know about.
Yeah, so it's important that the relief efforts that come from these caregivers all over the world, nurses, doctors, administrative staff, everybody that's in medical, pharmacy, police, and fire, all the people on the front line, the daily emotional struggle that they endure, I don't think we ever will grasp how incredibly important that is. And I have a little taste of that watching my mom as the caregiver care for one person, and that's my dad. I can only imagine the enormity of what these caregivers take on during this relief effort of COVID. And I think if you're questioning, this vaccine, you have to understand that we have a very limited amount of testing that has been done. I mean, we're, what are we, a year, like you said, a year into this? I personally would like to see a little bit more testing before a vaccination gets, administered into, let's say, my body or my children's body. I just want to see a little bit more research and testing being done, just because I'm kind of a science nerd and I kind of know, a little bit about science and how it works. Not there's nothing wrong with a vaccine. If you've already been vaccinated, that's great. But in terms of the Parkinsonian community and people who are battling the brain diseases, I think it's really important that before you jump the gun and get vaccinated, that you have a really, really good, honest conversation with your neurologist and understand what your options are. Because I don't know what drug interaction are between the Parkinson's medication and the vaccine, if there is any. I don't know if the vaccine will have any changes in the symptoms, the dyskinesia, the tremors, the shuffling. I don't know. I don't know what each person is battling. Is there, blood pressure issues? Do you have blood clots? Do you have heart issues? Did you have a deep stem brain stimulator, surgically implanted in your brain? So there's a lot of things, moving parts on the outside that needed to be discussed with your neurologist. But in terms of relief in COVID, it's very promising to millions and millions of others, kind of almost like if you go on the website, teamgatewaytoacure.org, you'll go to a page under media and you'll see the trailer for A Race for Another Day. And it's so heartwarming. The Race for Another Day is basically the life of Dr. Jerry Medoff, who was a Washington University here in St. Louis medical research scientist, who was the pinnacle of his days in infectious disease. If you want an infectious disease consult, he's the guy to go to. And he became amazingly famous 20 years ago when he invented the HIV virus, the 21 pill cocktail for the disease, which was the huge epidemic back then, kind of like COVID is today.
Right.
So when you look at the trajectory of HIV 20 years later, which is now, you take one pill and live a normal life. It's because of his breakthrough. So where will Parkinson's be 20 years from now? Because Dr. Jerry Medoff has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and today he is taking 21 pills for Parkinson's. So where will his life be, or where will Parkinson's be 20 years from now, the way AIDS was 20 years ago? And to see that unravel in our time, it's almost one of the biggest medical mysteries of our ages. And so, unfortunately, Dr. Jerry Medoff lost his battle of Parkinson's back in January.
I'm sorry.
But it's going to be amazing to see A Race for Another Day, this documentary movie, come to life, because we have another day of life because of the caregiver, and we all are on a race. Each one of us are on our own race for another day, battling whatever it is. If it's Parkinson's, it's brain cancer, is it MS, ALS, whatever that is, you fill in the blank. There's a caregiver giving hope and comfort for another day in this race. And that's what this movie's about.
And I'll definitely look forward to watching that. I did want to ask you about this. Of course, like I said, we're in the final stage, I think, hopefully at least, of this pandemic. So going forward with Gateway to a Cure, once this pandemic is over, what are some of your goals for the foundation?
Oh, yeah. So we have a couple of documentary movies that will be released right around Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them I can't really talk about, but if you go to the website, you'll find in the next coming weeks that I'm going to be launching an insight to that, which these two documentary movies are amazing. And then I also just collaborated with one of the best award-winning children's author book writers, Jason Paul, who is actually going to be ghostwriting my children's book. And my front cover and the back cover of the book, children's book, has just been released. The rendering from an illustrator out in Sweden. Sorry about this fire truck.
It's all right.
Yeah. So the rendering is on the website, it's just amazing. But the book is called Cheer for Care. Cheer because Jen, cheering on caregivers. And basically what the book is about are many stories of children from 5 to 25 sharing their stories on how they are amazing caregivers, giving love and hope and comfort back to their loved ones. And if you can imagine a grandparent that watches their grandchild walk into the room, their eyes light up. The innocence and the creativity of a child, and through their eyes, what sort of stories they can share, because caregiving doesn't have to be expensive. You can sit and you can play Uno. Like I sit and play Uno with my dad, and I kick his butt every single time. He never win against me. I don't know what it is.
You hit him with like the draw four.
I do not go there to lose. But when we play checkers, I don't know how he does it, but he always kicks my butt. But it's just those little things, and that through the eyes of a child, how amazing their stories. And we're going to unravel those through Cheer for Care, the children's book, which will be done toward the end of the year. So I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. And I look forward to seeing that too. And I'll definitely be paying attention to when it gets released. You're on the go, so I don't want I don't want to keep you too long. And I'm very glad that you're here and that you're doing this. So with every guest, I have this concluding segment called Rapid Fire. And what it consists of is it's 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 answers from you. You can say skip. We're not strict. So are you ready?
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Okay, I'm ready.
It shouldn't be too hard. Okay, so we kind of alluded to it earlier when I was talking about your Windy City upbringing. So first, favorite thing about Chicago, I guess.
Say it again? I'm sorry, you cut out.
No, it's fine. So I said, we talked about you growing up in Chicago or at the beginning of the podcast. So I guess the first question of this rapid fire would be your favorite thing about Chicago.
Oh, deep Chicago pizza.
Everyone says that.
Everyone's deep dish.
Yeah.
Deep dish. Yeah.
I had on Rebecca Harlow, she's the sideline reporter for the New York Knicks, but she's originally from Chicago, said the same exact thing. I got to try. If I can ever get up to the Windy City, I've never been. I've got to have it.
It's so good. It's so delicious.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, you can't knock it till you try it. So second, you've been in St. Louis a long time, going back to the 90s. Favorite thing about St. Louis?
Well, it was the Rams. Now it's the Cardinals.
Okay, hey, listen, Cardinals, they just got Nolan Arenado. They're off to a decent start. Let's see what they can do. Speaking of the Rams, third, you mentioned, of course, being there during the greatest show on turf era. Of all the players in the team that was there during that really high period of success for the franchise, who was your favorite player that you interacted with personally?
Isaac
Bruce.
Isaac Bruce. Yeah, him and I were good friends. We do a lot of events together, charity. I support him and his effort. The Isaac Bruce Foundation, which is amazing. Go to his website, theisaacbrucefoundation.com. And he provides scholarships and equipment for inner city kids for the play football. He's an amazing man on and off the field, of course, and just got in the Hall of Fame. So he's got his yellow jacket. Come this fall, he's going to be out there in Canton, Ohio. Really looking forward to being a part of that. And City of St. Louis is throwing him a huge party, so we're really excited.
As they should. And for those of you that are listening that may not be that into the NFL, I'm a Giants fan, but I find myself often going back and watching the highlights of the greatest show on turf era, Rams. Just if you have some time to kill, please watch their highlights, because that was offensive football at its purest and finest. So fourth, as a cheerleader, I'm sure there's a lot of great moments on the sidelines and a lot of hilarious ones. So what was the funniest moment you ever had on the sidelines?
Oh, I don't know about the sidelines, but the locker room was the blast. And even the players will tell you, yeah, it's fun to perform and be on the field. And it's great. The game is amazing and spectators are awesome. But some of the funniest things come, the gags and the jokes and the goofing around are all in the locker room. I mean, I will never forget those days. In fact, when I reminisce with the other players and cheerleaders, that's all we talk about, our locker room days. And you just get a lot of goofing off and just a lot of jokes. Then that's fun.
Oh, for sure. It's
in terms of on the field, I haven't really had any anything funny on the field, other than I did find out that, I don't know if you know this, but football players do not take potty breaks.
No,
Excuse me,
no.
coach, can I go to the men's room? No, they don't. They go right there on the field.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, Jen, is there a tent? No, there's no tent. Use your imagination. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I will. The reason I found that out is Mark Schlereth, who was a great offensive lineman for the Broncos. I think he's in the Hall of Fame in his own right. He would literally, and I'm not going to get graphic because I keep it clean on this podcast. Let's just say when you knew he was going, because he would start shaking his leg, which was an indicator that he was relieving himself on the field.
Well,
So
yeah, and we're like front and center with these dudes, and it's like, okay, that's how that's done.
I do not envy whoever has to clean the uniforms after that. Like, that person, whoever has to do that, they deserve a medal. So we'll conclude with the final question. Fifth and finally, we kind of talked about it. For those who are suffering from this disease, and of course those who are caring for those with this disease, if you could just give them some words of encouragement from your experiences, what would you say to them?
For the person battling the disease of Parkinson's or any of the brain diseases, use your voice to reach out when you can't, because there is no medal at the end of your day that you're a hero to do things when you can't. Having your independence taken away is not a bad thing, and you shouldn't have any shame attached to that. Reaching out for help is really, really important. It also shows bravery and strength. I got to tell you, as a mother, my 3 children, there's a lot of good things that I can do as a mom. I mean, I make great PB&Js, my macaroni and cheese, nobody can touch it. I got the recipe that is first place, but there's a lot of things I cannot do and I'm not good at. And so I reach out to my people that if I don't know, or if I can't, I've got really good people around me that will jump in and do it, because I'm not going to pretend to say that I know how to do it all, because I don't. But there is somebody out there that can, and make no mistake, I will reach out. So reach out, ask for help when you can't. There's nothing wrong with it. There's some things you're good at and some things you're not, and it's okay. And when you know that you can't, you need to use your bravery, use your strength, and ask for help. In terms of a caregiver, try not to be God Jr. going into this disease. You're not there to save them. What you are there to do is give them hope and comfort, and just love them. Because at the end of the day, when they lay their head on their pillow, there's one thing that comes to their mind. They just want to know that there is love surrounded around them while they battle their disease. And that is exactly what you have to keep in the forefront of your mind.
Absolutely. And so that concludes episode 71 of the Mike and Aiden podcast, an episode that I was very glad to do. Like I said, before in previous episodes, we mix it up. I call us the Swiss Army knife of podcasts, just because there is no specific format. It's really just interesting people who are nice enough to make the time for me. And Jen, certainly you were no different. So before we go, besides, of course, we like to promote ourselves usually. So besides, of course, Gateway to a Cure, which you can find them on the web